Welcome everyone to another episode of Women's Self-Care Series Season 2. We've been talking about self-care in this series for so long, yet we have yet to talk about one common issue a lot of mothers are experiencing. Any guesses on what is it about? More and more moms experience postpartum mood disorder nowadays. Unfortunately, despite many people being aware of, many moms are still left alone and frustrated in dealing with it. Worst, they are being bullied by others who don't understand their condition. Cristal, a blogger and mom of one from Seattle, has sadly experienced all that, and despite this depressing story, she stood up with grace and is now inspiring other moms who are going through the same thing. As the saying goes, if you've got a choice, choose to be kind. Let's all welcome this inspiring mom from Seattle, Cristal. Hi, Cristal. I hope you're
Hello.
having a good day.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we should just dive into our questions, right? Okay, could you tell us more about yourself and how you started your page, Raw Motherhood?
Yeah, so I had my son in February of 2020, and I think a lot of what I saw all over Instagram and Facebook from friends, family, and just influencers in general was like how excited, happy women were after they gave birth to their child. They were elated, they felt complete and whole. And I had my son and I got home from the hospital and I didn't feel any of that. I felt lost. I felt confused. I felt like a failure. I felt guilty. Like I didn't experience that extreme joy that everyone was like talking about. And so like I was doing something wrong and like there was something wrong with me. And so Brody's 2 now, but I dealt with that probably alone for about, I'd say probably until about 2 months postpartum. And then I finally came across some other moms on Instagram who had experienced similar things and or were experiencing those similar things at that point in time. And that's when I realized like I wasn't alone. And so I decided, I said, like I'm going to start talking about this. I think clearly I'm not the only person that's experiencing this, but people are so afraid. Like we're so afraid to say anything as mothers, as women. We're afraid to talk about that stuff because it shows signs of weakness or it, and I think just mental health in general is just something, it's a taboo topic that we're afraid to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah. So like, and experiencing postpartum anything is something that's scary. And I think we're just afraid. We're afraid to talk about it. So I was like, I'm not afraid to talk about it. I want to talk about it. I want other moms to feel heard and seen and validated and to know that they're not alone. And just because you feel this way, it doesn't mean you're a bad mom.
Exactly. Yeah, very true. And unfortunately and very sadly, I mean, until now with all this social media that people can look at and know easily what is this all about, they simply just don't look into it and choose to be this cruel to other people, and some things that we cannot control. Okay, do you think that self-care has something to do with how you cope up with all these bad experiences, and can you share your self-care habits and routines nowadays?
Yeah, so I think self-care had a huge thing to do with it. As a mom, and like just as a new mom, your idea of self-care changes very drastically. Some days, in all honesty, like self-care is no self-care, and that's okay. And it took a long time for me to experiencing postpartum anxiety, it took a long time for me to feel comfortable with like doing something for myself, doing something that wasn't for Brody. And when I finally realized that, like I slowly started to feel better. I slowly started to, so I would do things like I would journal, or I would write out how I was feeling and my experiences. And it like was a huge weight that was lifted off my chest. I would even just like getting out and going for a walk, whether Brody was with me or not, like just getting was a huge thing that when I started to feel really stressed or really anxious, or I started to feel like I was just a failure, or the day was going really horribly, I would take 5 minutes and I would put Brody in the stroller and we would go walk around the block 5 or 6 times. And so self-care had a huge impact on pulling me out, and still to this day, on pulling me out of kind of those darkest moments where I was super upset, I was crying, I was just lost. And so I do think that self-care had a huge impact on the ability to get to where I am today. And so looking at self-care today is still very different than what self-care was before. But today it's things like, for me, it's doing things that put a smile on my face, even if it's only 5 minutes a day. It's doing something I want to do, not something that my husband wants to do, not something that my son wants to do. It's something that and so that could be, it's either writing. So I love to write. So it's either writing, or it is going for a walk by myself. It's putting headphones in and tuning everything out and just dancing. Some days it's, if I'm lucky, I'll get to go and go drive somewhere by myself. Sometimes it's even honestly like the car ride to go to Target to pick up groceries by my, like that's like kind of some of those self-care things. Just some I get to choose, because as moms all the time, we're always doing stuff for everybody else, right? So the way that I at self-care as a mom now is something that I want to do. I'm going to choose what I want to do.
Yes, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, as you've said, even just for 5 minutes. Even I just want to share. I have now an almost 7-year-old and an 8-year-old girls. Both of them are girls. Every morning I would go, when I go to the gym, because that's my outlet. That's how I want things to do. And I still feel up to this time, I still feel that mom guilt when I leave them at home. So yes, especially when one of them suddenly wakes up and then would like, mommy, can you just stay with me here and sleep with me? And then I would just tell them that, no, you still have time to sleep. Mommy needs this. And it's very important to, get through the day, because if you don't have that, clarity with your mind, it's really difficult, and you will be the one to struggle. Yeah.
Couldn't be more true.
Okay. How does sharing your experience and inspiring others help you? I mean, I'm sure it just doesn't simply go away, right? This postpartum mood disorder. How did it help you cope up with it?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I think helped me with sharing my experiences was getting it out there. So it's hard. It's hard to ask for help. It's also hard to share experiences where you're vulnerable. And so I was dealing and coping with all of this. I was bottling it all up inside. I was afraid to talk about it because I didn't want to be seen as weak or as a bad mom or as a mom who didn't care. Like, I didn't want to be seen as any of that. And so when I finally started to share my experience, I started to develop this great community of women and moms on Instagram who were like, wow, I needed to hear this today. Or wow, like, I'm going through this exact thing. Can you help me figure this out? Or can you, like, what did you do when this happened? And it felt really validating. And it felt freeing in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
I felt free of all of this weight and all of this stress and all of this anxiety that I was putting on myself. I was creating this because I wouldn't talk about it. I'm not great at talking about my feelings. I'm great at writing my feelings, but I'm not about them.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came to Instagram, it was easy. It was like second nature because I could just type it, I could just write it all out. And so it really did, I think, connecting with other moms and realizing that I'm not alone, and
Mm-hmm.
also like really helping to inspire other moms to either ask for help or to recognize the signs and the symptoms that are more than just postpartum depression, because there's actually 6 different postpartum mood disorders, and the only one that's ever talked about is postpartum depression. So helping moms realize and understand that there's more than just like what you're experiencing could be something more than
Mm-hmm.
what you're seeing on social media
Mm-hmm.
or in life.
It's such an eye opener for me also. I mean, when you said there's 6 types of postpartum mood disorder, I didn't even know that. And I mean, it really helps to, I mean, use technology to to look into things, right? Do you think that despite the technology nowadays, there's still this really big gap on spreading awareness on things that matter, like postpartum disorder?
Yeah, so I think even 2 years ago when I
Mm.
was all of these things, the biggest common postpartum mood disorder is postpartum depression, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what you always talked to about at your postpartum appointments, even like during pregnancy. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, you experience these symptoms, and like what I went through, I knew I wasn't experiencing postpartum depression. I knew that that wasn't what I was going through, but I knew that it was something more than just what they call the baby blues,
Mm-hmm.
which, most, I think it's like 95% of women go through the baby blues.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this idea that I was experiencing something, I knew it was something more, but I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't find information on it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't find anything. Every time that I searched postpartum mood disorders, all that would pop up was postpartum depression. And it
Mm-hmm.
became really challenging to talk about what I was going through because it
Yes.
wasn't postpartum depression. So
Yes.
I think there's a huge gap because it's not only in like what you can find in technology, but it's also like in the medical field.
Yeah.
All we're telling mothers to watch out for are signs of postpartum depression. We're not telling them to look out for anything else that
Mm-hmm.
could also be some sort of postpartum mood disorder that they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, there's a huge gap in the medical community. There's a huge gap in
Mm-hmm.
technology. So I think raising any awareness about other postpartum mood disorders, or just the fact that there are other postpartum mood disorders, um, is definitely desperately needed.
Yes. So this type of, I think the best way, because as you've said, even in the medical field, there's this lack of information being said. So the best way that we really can do is like what you do. I mean, spread, if you're experiencing it, there's no better way on, helping others, but sharing your experience and, you know, help each other. Yeah, and despite not being able to, see face to face or all, I mean, that's why technology here is. Yeah, so we can do like this Zoom right now. You're in Seattle, I'm here in Singapore, and yeah, I'm sure a lot of people will benefit from this conversation, and be inspired to just know, first is know if ever they are experiencing this kind of postpartum mood disorder, and next is be aware of it. I mean, if there's other people that they see is going through this, then at least they know that they need help. They Whatever help they can do for them can be done. Yeah, I hope you don't mind me asking. It's not included in the questions I sent you. As you've said, there's different kind of postpartum depression, right? And I think yours is like a different specific one, right? So can
Yeah.
you tell us more on why is it different, and what is the difference, if you can, yeah, with postpartum depression and postpartum mood disorder?
Yeah, so postpartum depression is technically a postpartum mood disorder. What I went through was postpartum anxiety, and the main difference between the two is really around this feeling of constant worrying. So I can give a good example, like when I had so I had a C-section. And so when I came home, we had three really big dogs. And so my husband didn't want me sleeping on the bed, because if they jumped on the bed, like, didn't want to risk, opening up
Yes.
the incident. That. So I actually slept on the floor, not on the floor, but on an air mattress on the floor in my son's room, right next to his crib. And I had to get a baby monitor, so a video baby monitor that monitored his breathing and would show me that he was, because I had this nagging fear in the back of my mind that was telling me, like, he's not breathing, like, you have to check he's breathing. And so I would literally lay on the floor, could touch him in the crib, but would lay on the floor, turn on the baby monitor on my phone so that I could validate that he was actually breathing. And so it's those, and then I would spend countless hours researching things online in the middle of the night. So like I wasn't sleeping. Like I would spend countless hours researching things around like development. So was he progressing, and was he developing at the right pace that everybody else was? Was he following the curves that he's supposed to follow? Even though nothing had presented itself that would make me feel another way. But because part of anxiety, I was constantly worried and I was constantly stressed. So it was the slightest cough. It was, oh my goodness, something bad is going to happen to him. Or it was the like, oh my goodness, he tripped and he fell, something bad is going to happen to him. That's really the main difference. So like postpartum depression is similar, and it can be hard to tell the difference, but the main difference really in that fear and that anxiety piece. And I still experience it today. So postpartum mood disorders don't just go away. They last, I believe it's like up to 5 years after you've had a kid. So like even to this day, I still experience some of those anxiety symptoms, especially when it's things like he's going to do something for the first time by himself. Like it scares me. And I have to, but now I'm better at managing it. So like I'm better at recognizing when those things are going to happen, so I can like talk myself off of the ledge. But yeah, there's so many other postpartum mood disorders. There's like postpartum OCD, there's postpartum psychosis, there's baby blues is technically considered a postpartum mood disorder. So there's actually quite a few out there that people are just unaware of.
Yes. I'm in awe of what information you're throwing me. I mean, it's such a learning experience and really an eye opener and very helpful. And in this series, where our audience is more of moms, it's really helpful. Yeah, and it's very sad and for other moms to experience this, and what's worst is for other people to say bad things about you. I mean, what is your message for those societal bullies who it's okay to not understand about other things, but then respecting others? I mean, you just need to respect them, right? No, I don't understand how difficult it could be. What is your message for them?
I think the biggest thing is so a lot of what I experienced was things like, you're a bad mom, or how can you not love this phase of motherhood? How can you not want to spend every waking moment with your child? Like those type of things. And that's what led to a lot of the guilt and the anxiety and the frustration.
Mhm.
And I mean, like, what I'd have to say is, like, just because I didn't experience the same thing that you did. So just because we're different doesn't
Mhm.
mean that I'm a bad mom. And it doesn't
Mhm.
mean I care tremendously and wouldn't do anything for my son. And I don't
Mhm.
love him like that. It doesn't mean any of that. It means
Yes.
that we're, and that's okay. It's okay to be,
Mhm.
it's okay to have different experiences and to feel things differently. Like, that's why they're called feelings. Not everybody has the same ones, right? Uh, yeah.
Mm. Okay, now what is your advice for those new moms who are experiencing postpartum mood disorder, and how can they cope up with it?
So I think the biggest piece of advice is ask for help. So I know it's easier said than done because I
Mm.
experienced it. I got so far and so deep into it that I had a mental breakdown. I was on the floor crying uncontrollably in the bathroom. I like wanted to walk out the door and never come back. So
Oh.
I think those type of things, like,
Mm.
it's the recognizing, being able to recognize that there's something else going on and
Mhm.
ask for help. And help could mean many things, right? It could mean call a
Mhm.
friend that you talk to your spouse. If you don't feel comfortable talking to your spouse about it, just call somebody and talk to them, because even just talking about it was a huge relief for me. And it
Mhm.
also helped me be able to cope and heal.
Mhm.
And then I'd say the other piece of advice is, don't look at all the toxic positivity. So there's a lot of toxic positivity out there around motherhood.
Mhm.
Always the, like, oh, you have to enjoy this phase, and you have to enjoy these little moments, because
Mhm.
you're gonna regret if you don't enjoy them now. I'm
Mhm.
gonna say, just forget that advice and
Mhm.
do for you in the moment. Focus on what's best for you. If that means putting your screaming, crying child in their crib for 5 minutes so you can walk out of the room and collect yourself, do it. They're going to be fine in the crib for 5 minutes. They'll be fine in the crib for an hour as they're crying. They will be fine because you've put them in a safe space.
Yes.
So I think
Mhm.
that would be.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, it's even if I don't have, and I'm not a new mom right now, but then it's such a great awareness that, I mean, giving all this. I really think that it should be out there so that more people could learn about it, even if they are not experiencing it. It's important to just be aware about it. And really, thank you so much for sharing your experience and being open and telling others on what you've experienced. It's very uh, sad and disheartening to really see other moms like you who experience this. But then I'm really know that I'm really proud and happy that you've been able to cope up and look at you now. I mean, sharing and inspiring other moms. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Okay, and I hope, do you have any uh, other things that you could say to our audience?
I don't think so. I think just thank you so much for having me. I
Mhm.
appreciate it.
Yes, thank you
I,
so much also.
I love being able to talk about it. As it's difficult to talk about, I think
Mhm.
my goal is, like, if I can inspire, I can help one other mom, then I'm all in.
Thank you so much, and I hope you can come back sometime soon in
I'd
the
love.
show again. Yes, and thank you for whatever. Thank you for inspiring other moms. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much.